welcome everybody. I'm going to hand you over to Kevin Quinn. If you haven't met him before, he's I say recently appointed, but you know well now, recently appointed CEO of Tennis Ireland. So Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Good evening, everyone. So brilliant to see so many of you here on this very important, actually, update call. But looking at the list there, I can see I've met quite a few of you already, which is great. So everyone is very welcome. This presentation, for me, is an interesting one because it sort of sets out a standard for how I hope Tennis Ireland will communicate with each of our stakeholder groups going forward in terms of being more transparent, more open, available, but also collaborative and consultative in terms of what we do. Communication, I started in this role, by the way, about 7 months ago, so a little bit after, just a couple of weeks after Simon, who's here as our competitions manager. So communication, I think, was one of the areas that I identified pretty soon that was an area that we needed to improve in. And this process is probably the first process where I think we've set a new standard for Tennis Ireland with regards to how collaborative, how together we've come together for something which is so important for this stakeholder group here, you as parents and as coaches. Obviously, competition is a key product that drives a lot of people within tennis in Ireland. It's why we're here. And certainly Simon early on would have identified a number of grey areas with regards to our rules, which had changed over a number of years, but not have been captured, those changes, directly in the rules and regs that were published on our website. So that was the first instance in this, but also he and Rosa indeed took a lot of time to step back to look at the rules and regs of all of our competitions and to actually set a standard for what might be best practice in terms of how we go about setting up our competitions throughout the season. So that didn't just looking at what's going on with Tennis Europe, with the ITF, with the LTA, and seeing how we could improve. It also involved, you know, back in March, actually, and this webinar tonight almost comes full circle in that meeting with parents, you know, started off back in March in terms of getting an idea of where the concerns are, where the issues were for competing in tennis in Ireland. So that's why I say full circle, we come back around to parents and to coaches again tonight. But in between that, it's taken a consultative view with our competitions committee at Tennis Ireland a number of times, a number of board meetings there with our governance committee and indeed with our board. So this process has been very detailed, as I said, very collaborative, open and consultative. And I think the work of what Simon, what Rosa have done has been fantastic. New team members as well in competitions, in Neil Hanlon, who is on the call tonight as well. He's joining us from St. Anne's and Waterford, and Neil's very welcome. And Michael Flanagan, I think he could be on the call too, up north in terms of helping us with some of the data aspects of you know, TI, the tournament software and all that, which is great. I'm sorry to report that Rosa is leaving us towards the end of the month. Rosa deserves huge credit for what she's done almost single-handedly through competitions in Ireland for a number of years. But we'll very much miss Rosa, but we'll keep her close because we know she's still going to be involved in some way, shape or form, we hope. But she's formally leaving us, and Neil Hanlon will be taking over. Neil's in the call too. But for me, it's just to say thank you to Simon, to Rosa, to Neil, to Michael, to all of the volunteers, and to you in terms of parents and coaches that are involved in terms of getting us to this stage. Not just will we have new rules and regs or updated rules and regs in terms of competitions to publish to our website soon. We're almost at the end of that process. This is the last webinar we're doing, but we're also going to have a competitions calendar available within a short matter of days, weeks, as well, so that looking into next season, we're going to be really, really well set and better set than we've never been for competition in tennis in Ireland. So thanks, folks. Enjoyed the presentation. Simon is a gifted presenter, and hand it back to you, Simon. Take it easy.
That's pressure. So my first slide I don't need to talk about because Kevin's covered it so well. But the big thing about this is if you ever do need to contact us, our email addresses are on this. I want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to Rosa who has been instrumental in catching me up when I took over, and a wealth of knowledge and information that I needed. And we're going to miss her greatly. And to welcome Neil to the team who starts on the 6th of November. If you've been to a tournament in St Anne's, Waterford, Neil has been there and made things run extremely smoothly. So he has great experience over a number of years in St Anne's, and he'll be a great benefit to us here. And to Michael, who has been in the job a couple of months now as well. So if you need anything on rankings or selections to Tennis Europe and ITF events, endorsements, he's looking after that. And just like that, Michael joins the call. Um, so if you need anything on rankings or data, or you lose your passwords, anything of the such, Michael is your data man. So suppose we start. I want to get through this in about 1 hour, because I know we all live busy lives, and we don't want to go on forever. We want the feedback from this meeting. There is a few questions at the end, an interactive poll to keep us from falling asleep. So we need and would really appreciate that feedback after the last slide. So I suppose the main question is, why are we here? And as Kevin said, once I started in the role, it was very clear to see that we needed better communication between Tennis Ireland and all the stakeholders, and importantly, parents and coaches. The rules on the website were dated 2017, and a lot of rules have changed since then, maybe from hearsay, some parents talking to each other to learn the rules, rather than actually seeking a black and white document on our website. And we need that, and we need no more grey areas or assumptions. So this is full circle, as Kevin said as well. We had initial feedback from parents in March 2023 on all the provinces. Then we had feedback from the tournament referees in every province after the summer there. And from that, we saw that everyone wanted better clarity and more education on these rules. So we want consistency and how they're applied at tournaments. So changes for the future, and we're going to go through a lot of rule updates tonight, but we're going to go through some changes that are happening as we speak. So the rules and regulations document, which is the main reason we're here tonight, to get feedback on the rules changes, is to be published next week, all being well, along with the calendar. From 2024, we're proposing a champions race in addition to the 52-week rolling ranking system we currently have, which would include your top 6 singles and top 6 doubles results. So that would run from January, similar to the ATP or WTA races if you follow tennis. And that would incorporate your top 6 singles and top 6 doubles results. And that will culminate in an end of year top 8 match play, which would be great. Talking about match plays in general, we haven't had match play since well before COVID. So if you're new, under 12 or younger, you might not know what match plays were, but we thought they were a great benefit to coming up the pathway. You could come from a brand new beginner, play in your region, and get through that to provincial and ultimately play against national players. So we're looking to return that next autumn in some format similar or different than before. The calendar will be published next week, all being well. The National Junior Indoors Tournament will be published tomorrow. So you'll get all information on that. We are changing the dates of that after feedback from last year. So instead of being over that awkward Christmas period where no one wanted to leave the house or travel, or you wanted to spend time with family, we're proposing to have that the first two weekends of January. And all the information will be on the tournament software, obviously, from tomorrow. The tournament criteria for hosting, we now have minimum requirements that we sent with the tournament permits to the tournaments. So if you're a certain level of tournament, then we require certain things, and that will be how you're judged for the next year, and whether you're still a T1000, for example, or even higher. So we want to really differentiate between the tournaments being run very, very well and very high standard of refereeing, rather than just give the same grades out every single year. And the officiating pathway and accreditation system. So basically, we're one of the only countries in Europe that doesn't have, or maybe the world maybe, that doesn't have an accreditation system for umpires and referees. So I've designed an officiating pathway and an accreditation system, which means we'll have different levels of referees for tournaments. That will be judged on your experience as an official before, or if you want to become an official, obviously there'll be an entry system for that as well. And we hope to have, or we have applied for 11, 12 international junior tournaments per year. And I'll go through those very quickly because if you want to put it in your calendar now, obviously these will be in the junior calendar that is released next week. But I know I've already had a couple of emails this week looking for dates for the future. So obviously, this Friday we have sign in to the Tennis Europe under 14. It's too late to enter that unless you want to be an onside alternate, of course. From February we have the under 12 Tennis Europe. So it was in the summer last year, but we've moved it to February this year, along with an under 18 ITF, which was there last year in Castleknock. This Easter coming, we'll have an under 14 Tennis Europe and an under 18 ITF. And then in the summer, we will have 2 under 14 Tennis Europes and 3 under 18 ITFs. And then back around to October next year, we'll be hosting a Tennis Europe under 14 and an under 18 ITF. So that's nearly at our limit, and the ITF and Tennis Europe have been very good in granting us permission to run as many tournaments as we can. And some of the feedback later on in the questions will be, do you think we need to do more? Are you happy, content with the amount we have, or do you think we're doing too much? And we really want to get that feedback from you guys. And as an older junior, there is an ability, obviously, to play senior tennis. So we want to bring back the Irish Open, which is a 15K event, an ITF 15K event. So it's a world ranking event. And this is set to return back in June 2024. So obviously, if you're in your under 18s, this would be something you should be aiming for as well, because you'll be going into senior tennis soon. Ranking structures. So obviously there's been a lot of discussion of ranking structures between everybody, and we got a lot of feedback during the year and from tournament referees. As I said already, there'll be a new champions race, which will culminate in a great end of season, albeit fun tournament, similar to something exciting to aim towards, especially after, say, Fitzwilliam, where you may usually take a break or not think about attending tournaments. It's important. This will be a nice fun element to end with, and you'll still need your ranking points from January to December to get into that. The ranking points tables are the same as last year, so no massive ranking changes. There's a couple of European international point changes, but it's just on the highest end in the European Championships. And they're all published on the website and will be published when the new rules come in. Updated rules come in next week. There'll be the ranking tables for 2024, so you can get that. They have been on our website the whole time, but quite tough to find. We have a new website launched maybe in the next couple of weeks. So that should be a lot easier to find, on a new calendar system on the website where you can filter between different levels of tournaments. So if you're only looking for T100 tournaments, you can filter and see when they're on. Obviously, there's been a lot of chat throughout this year and some of last year whether rankings are beneficial to the under 12 age group, and obviously that's in a lot of sports. You've seen it in Gaelic football recently, and all sports, whether we should be very competitive at those ages. So we'd like to get your feedback on that towards the end as well. And the WTN, the World Tennis Number, if you're up to date on that, we will continue to monitor that throughout 2024, like we have been. And we meet with the ITF team who runs the WTN regularly, and we give feedback on how the algorithm can be improved, and how we can use that in junior tennis going forward in the future. We already use it quite a bit for senior tennis, and you'll notice on the ITF tournaments, they'll be using it as a third comparison for the entry list as well. And then the last thing that we have, this is probably one of a lot of the rules updates have been from the issues that I've been receiving, the concerns from emails or from phone calls, and we're trying to make everything common sense. So you'll know if you've come across this rule this year that there was in the ranking systems, there was at the top that said if there's less than 6 entries, you would be downgraded one level. So if you entered a T500 and you only have 5 entries and you won that, you would only get 200 points. So we've taken on board all the feedback, and if it's 4 or 5 entries, you will keep your full points as long as round robin draw is used, because therefore you're playing the same number of matches you would do. if you're in maybe an 8 or 16 draw. But if it's 3 entries or below, which I think is fair, it'll be downgraded by one category. So we'll get feedback on all those as well. Um, so I'm going to go through a few of the rule updates as quickly as possible. But we did put this one first because if your brain is fried by the end of this session, this will be the one that's always the toughest to get. So I've tried to make it as easy to understand as usual. It is complex rule overlapping tournaments, and it's probably the question we receive the most. And there's different sections here. So obviously, the first section is 2 overlapping domestic tournaments. Okay, so you can enter 2 domestic tournaments at the same time, but only if they overlap by 1 day or less. So really, you're talking about a final finishing and the first day of the next tournament starting. So if we take this next week's example of Castlebar and David Lloyd's, who are on the same week but overlap by more than 1 day, you cannot enter both those tournaments. I have no problem that people have done to hedge their bets, and obviously if they're not accepted into one tournament, they can go into the other one because that's and enter both. But as long as you withdraw, and that's what withdrawal deadlines are for, as long as you withdraw by the right time, then of course you can do that. But if you forget to withdraw and end up playing both, which we'll make sure it doesn't happen, but if anyone gets through the net, you'll end up getting no ranking points for both anyway. So it's very important to understand this rule. So that's for 2 overlapping domestic junior tournaments. For overlapping junior and adult domestic tournaments, so this is if a junior domestic tournament and an adult domestic tournament are on at the same time, you need to notify both referees and to have their agreement that you're going to be playing in both. As I said at the bottom here, some junior and adult tournaments are running in the same venue, so you don't need that. That's considered as one tournament. But it's important that the referees agree on this because obviously they have to schedule you in 2 different places, and they're under no obligation to accommodate that. This is probably the question again. We get a lot of international tournaments overlapping with the domestic tournaments. So the first case, which doesn't happen too often because it's usually tournament finishing, is, and there's only so many people in the final. A domestic tournament that ends on a Saturday of the qualifying draw is due to take place. Players can play international tournament qualifying of the next one, basically, provided that the finals of the domestic tournament take place on a Friday. And all tournaments, most tournaments, I'd say last year, did that and published that well in advance that their finals were going to be on the Friday because they knew the ITF or the Tennis Europe was starting on the Saturday. It gets more complex, hence the more words here. But for junior domestic tournaments that are on the same week as a main draw of an international tournament, and a very simple way to look at this is that you can play in a junior domestic tournament as long as you are out of all events in the international tournament before the draw of the domestic tournament is made for that level. So another example, again, the Tennis Europe is on next week. Castlebar and Belfast David Lloyd's are holding their 14 draws till at least the Monday night, Castlebar Tuesday night. So that means if you do exit the international, you can still take part in the domestic tournament. But as soon as that draw is made for the domestic tournament, you must have withdrawn yourself if you're still in the Tennis Europe or ITFs in future. You must enter the same age group because of this, because obviously if you're under 12, that draw has already been made, so you won't be able to participate in the domestic tournament. And as I said at the end there, you must notify. The onus is on you to withdraw and notify the referee before the draw is made. If again anybody goes on to play in the domestic tournament while still active, it's now 0 tolerance because the rule is very clear. So you will lose all domestic and ITF points, and you are liable to further sanctions by the ITF for breaking their rules. This doesn't happen too often, but we do want, as I said earlier, we do want to encourage older juniors to play in adult tournaments. So it's very similar to the last rule. You can play in an overlapping adult domestic tournament if you're in a junior international, as long as again you have been eliminated from all the draws of the international tournament before the draw of the domestic tournament is made. And we're asking, similar to what we've done with the junior tournaments, we're asking the senior tournament for, say, grade 1 or championship draw to try to hold that draw back till the Monday night or Tuesday night, and to help as many of the top under 18s try to get into that draw, because again, it is beneficial to juniors to be playing in adult events. And the last two are just the exact same from the last slide. So it's up to you to notify, and if you do end up playing in both, you will lose all ranking points again and be liable to sanctions. Okay, so that's probably the most complex rule we're going to go through, because it's one that comes up a lot, and it was written in a lot of words in the 2017 document, and hopefully that's slightly clearer and we'll get feedback. I'll speak one of the questions later on is basically, is it clear? So if there's any questions on that, don't hesitate to ask. Another issue that came up during the year is obviously welfare of players. So we don't want we've heard of under 12s or any juniors in general ending up on the court after midnight or very late at night and then on obviously the next day very early. We don't want that to happen. We have to look after the juniors, and it's ITF standard rules that we're incorporating here. So we're looking at this rule here, the latest scheduled start time for adult tournaments, and this is important in case juniors are playing adult tournaments, that the last time you should be scheduled for is 10 p.m. Okay, and you shouldn't be on court later than midnight. So as I said here, if you're a junior playing in an adult tournament, you're bound by the same rules. The latest start times for under 18 tournaments, scheduled times, is 9 p.m. and you shouldn't be on court later than 11. And then you can see the difference there for 12s, 14s, and 16s. You shouldn't be scheduled later than 8 and shouldn't be on court later than 9:30. These times can be pushed back a maximum of 1 hour on the agreement with the referee. And obviously, if it's been a very rainy day, your scheduled start time is still what was in the release of the match schedule. So this, if it ends up slightly later, that's just what happens. We need to get through schedules obviously as well, and the weather in Ireland doesn't help us that way. And then the last rule there is an overnight rule. So we call it the overnight rule, but basically it means from your last match that you played in that day, there should be a 12-hour rest until your match the next day. So if a under 18 comes off at say 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. as the example here, you shouldn't be scheduled till at least 10 a.m. the next day. We have a further recommendation that obviously if you can do as a tournament referee, and this is what we told the referees in the feedback, that if you could schedule them basically not as late as possible because you want to be late every night, but later in the afternoon when you had a late finish, that would be great, but not necessary. Okay, again, these are all very common questions. I probably get this question again 2 or 3 times a week coming up to tournament season or during tournaments. And you'll notice a slight change in the T100 events here as well. So players the whole season of last were prohibited and recommended from Tanzania not to enter 2 age groups in T100 or 300 events. And that was because you're a beginner and you should only be playing your own age group. In T200 events with a national ranking of 1 to 29, you shouldn't be entering. That's the same as 2023, but we have extended the T100s that you shouldn't be playing if you're 1 to 59. It was 1 to 49 last year. And obviously, the other example is if you're not eligible to play your own age group, you shouldn't be entering another age group. So it's very obvious there if you are number 2 in the country at under 12s, but you've never played under 14 tournaments, that you shouldn't be entering that because you're not a beginner. And if you can, it's always been up to the club. We do recommend that clubs, similar to senior tournaments, that you try to run as many events as you can within keeping your schedules correct. Because as I said, you don't want to be on past the starting times of the previous slide. It's good and beneficial to the players if they can enter 2 age groups at T500 and above. And that's some feedback we want to get on that from you guys at the end as well. Okay, the next one, we're going into more simple ones, but ones that we need to make you aware of. There are bits in red or bits that have been added, and then the bottom rule there has been added as well. So basically, it said in the 2017 rules that a tournament committee should have at least 3 people: the tournament director, the chairperson, and the tournament referee. We've added in that there should be a designated child safeguarding officer also in that committee. That's common sense. And the details of this person, like it should be already in the club should be displayed in the notice board. That's a normal safeguarding requirement, that in your own club there should be the safeguarding officer, the designated safeguarding officer details on the club notice board or around the club. And then it doesn't happen too often, but the slightly updated this rule is, again, obviously a referee and his deputy, this is more for adult tournaments, the first bit. But they can play in their own tournaments if they're not involved in making the draw or seeding any event in which they're playing. And then more relatable to juniors, and this does happen a bit, obviously, because sometimes when you're a parent, you're helping out in the club, or you have helped out in the club, and your children come into tennis. A referee may not be included in making the draw, seeding the event, or any on-court referee decisions where their direct relative is in the draw, and that should go to someone else in the tournament committee who's there. Again, common sense that whether you can be accused of being impartial even if you are not impartial, even if you are being such, just to eliminate that doubt. And obviously, wild cards are very important at the start of the season when people don't have ranking points. And the wild card criteria of anything of T500s and above, basically, because that's what wild cards are given out for, are examined by Tennis Ireland prior to selections. T500s are done by the club, but we should be vetting that beforehand, just to make sure it's okay. You don't have to publish that anywhere, but just to make sure it's above board. And obviously T1000 and above are already done together with the competitions team, with the tournament committee. So there's no need to vet that. Seating rules. So again, the changes in red here. The bit in black at the top was done already, but in the 2017 rules for most tournaments, it was just up to the committee. Obviously, we bought in that it's very simple. Seating should be done on national singles ranking, very transparent. The only exception is a non-Irish player who obviously comes in. So it's happened maybe only 2-3 times in the last 5-6 years, where is that someone, say the number one in Spain, flies in to play an Irish tournament. They might be on holiday or anything, but obviously we should be seeding them, because if we don't seed them, it messes up the whole draw for, say, the number one Irish seeded person or whatever. So it's important that if that does happen, that we spot that, and we try to make sure the draw won't be inhibited by it. And then the doubles seeding, it happened in the national tournaments this year, and we had good feedback from the referees that it was a better way, and the results showed the same. Is that the doubles seeding will be done on a combined national singles ranking. So I've given the examples there. Basically, you add your two singles rankings together in terms of position, and the lowest position obviously will therefore be the highest seed. Okay, this is an updated rule that obviously we had to bring out or publish slightly early, because we wanted the under 10 players to get the benefit of it. So you should have seen this rule already, but if you haven't, we're trying to get the under 10s more experience before they hit under 12s. So for the last quarter, from 1st of September onwards every year, they will be allowed to play in 12 tournaments for those months, even though they're still under 10 and don't have a player passport. You don't have to do this, and you can continue to play under 10s for those last 4 months. This ultimately should be a decision for the parents and coaches together to see if that's beneficial for those 4 months. But it's important that we give the under 12s, the under 10s moving under 12s, some experience before they hit under 12s and to get themselves onto the system. A rather small rule, but all rules are important. And if you've been to a tournament, lots of players take toilet breaks. So toilet breaks are same as the ITF. You're allowed one each. Before, this was one for males and 2 for females in the Tennis Ireland 2017 rules. So equality has prevailed, and a player is entitled to one authorized break during the best of a 3-set match. I've put extra notes. These aren't in the rules, but notes just to say during this. So, well, this should always happen at the end of a set, and last reasonable length is the ITF rule, because obviously, you can't put a time in the toilet. But usually, if I'm a referee, anything more than 5 or 6 minutes, I'll be knocking the outside of the toilet facility and shouting in to tell the players to hurry up. Anything longer than that, you can be, the referee can take action. And this is a new ITF rule that just came in a few months ago, and you can see the reasoning behind it. You should not and cannot take a toilet break before championship or match tie break. So that's when it's one set all, and the deciding match tie break first to 10 is about to happen. You shouldn't take a toilet break. It upsets the rhythm. You should be able to last, obviously. So the match is going to be over in 5 to 10 minutes. And any other breaks, of course, you can take a break any other time. No one's going to stop you leaving the court, but it means you're on your own time. So if you have taken a break at the end of a set or change of ends, etc., it could be 90 seconds. If you're not back within those 90 seconds, time violations will occur, which means if you're the server, you'll lose loss of serve, and then another 30 seconds later, you'll lose your second serve, and therefore you'll have 15 down, and so on and so on. You can't be code violated, defaulted for anything like that. Time violations are different than code violations, so you would just keep losing points until you've lost your service game, but that would have to be a lot of minutes. The next rule that has been updated, or really wasn't a rule before in general, was that we want to try to bring in consistency on when tournaments are published, when it opens for entries. So every tournament will open 4 weeks before the starting date of the tournament. That means everybody will have the same access to entering. The entry deadline will be no less than 8 days before play starts. And you'll see a difference then in the acceptance list, and then a 12-hour window after the acceptance list between your withdrawal deadline. So a lot of tournaments have sometimes had their acceptance list exactly the same deadline as the withdrawal list, which gives you no time to withdraw after you see whether you've made the tournament or not, or you could be in the exclude or the reserve list. And then another feedback that we want no less than 4 days before opening day of play, because obviously people need to book accommodation, need to know if they're. So you'll know that from the acceptance list, but you'll know your first day, whether you're on the first day, hopefully no less than 4 days. There's the odd exception is obviously that international tournament that we talked about. If they're holding the draw back, you will only get the 1 day's notice. But for the majority of tournaments, 99% of the tournaments, there'll be no less than 4 days. And that's what we sent to all the referees with the permits they know. And when we interacted with them after the season there and got their feedback, they've seen all these updated rules as well. Okay, so I said it would be quick, and I have been. The one thing before any questions, and haven't seen any questions come in yet, but maybe if one of the other guys can tell me if anything come in, we're going to do a quick feedback on these particular rules. So I'm going to start an interactive poll if I can find it, and if you just I'll give a couple of minutes for you to finish, but it's just 12 questions on your feedback. It's all very easy to negotiate, and I just want your positive or negative feedback, but honest feedback. So I'm going to launch that now. It will tell me who's sleeping and who's not. So we should have around 80 respondents. So that should come up on your screen now.
Simon, do you want to talk through questions?
Yeah, good.
So there's one question in there, which is, what's match play, please?
Okay, so maybe the question is asking what's match plays. So obviously before COVID, we had regional match plays, which meant you'd enter your own region. If you won or come in the top 2 and 3 or 4, depending on where you were, you would get through to your provincial match plays. So match plays is just playing off against other people. And then if you got through that, you would have a national match play against the other people who got through the other provinces. But basically, it was just the title of the tournament. It was called national match plays or regional match plays or provincial match plays. So as Kevin suggested, question 1 is just your opinion on international tournaments, how many we hold, and if you would like to see more or less, or just you think it's just the right amount. Some people are answering, so we are getting through it. Question 2, would you like to see the return of match plays? That's obviously where the correct questions come from. Yeah, so that's what I just said. The match plays from before. Question 3, if you have been to the T1000 tournaments before, should really show that criteria. So obviously, if you go on by your own judgment there on what level you thought was good, but I will publish that in a second. What is your opinion on the new proposed champions race? So obviously we went through that in the session. That's the top 6 singles and top 6 doubles results. Overlapping tournaments. Oh, we're getting good response on that at least. Does the rules seem clearer than before? Very simple, yes, no, or you still don't have a clue. No, 95% maybe didn't have a clue beforehand, so we're improving. Question 6, latest starting times. So just feedback on those starting times we talked about for latest schedule start times. Question 7, two age group entries. Does it seem clear or does it need further examination? Or does it not seem clear? Question 8, the seeding rules. Again, feedback on that. And question 9, are you in favour of allowing the tens to play up for those 4 months? Question 10, the set date. That's what we just did in terms of the no later than 4 days before the entry closes, etc. And question 11, this is just a feedback. So again, I expected a kind of split decision here, which is happening at the minute. And it's just, do you think your child will, if they're still under 12 or would have benefited if they're over 12? So it's again, hindsight is great. And having no ranking system, maybe it depends on the child and on the maturity of children, etc. And question 12, would you like to see a competitions newsletter separate to the Tennis Ireland general newsletter, which updates you on competitions info? That was a lot that we got back, a lot of info we got back from the parents in March that sometimes, obviously, if you're in a general newsletter, you may not open it or overlook it. Whereas if you have a competitions newsletter that maybe is highlighting the next few tournaments that are open for entry, or rule changes or rule updates, that obviously might be a better way to get through to each other. So we've had over 60 respondents there started. So I'm just looking at some questions that have come through. There's a good number of questions coming through, which is great. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll start taking these questions while people are still answering, if that's okay, so it might benefit. So I'm going to answer Ruth's question first because it's first on my list. Good question. So the delaying of the draws is well, it has been certainly for this October. Depends on the size of the club and in terms of the number of courts and how they can get away with how late they can start. And obviously that was at the discretion of the tournament in the past. We're now interacting a lot with the tournament to make sure we get the best of both. So as delayed as possible, but also if you delay it too much, then the domestic tournament won't be able to complete. So it will be 2024. It should be published in the regulations in advance yet. Okay. Then down to Sinead. So good question as well. It's all these questions come up regularly. So Sinead Gilroy. Oh, she's got there. Could you address around live draws? So sorry, this isn't a new rule. Already in the old set of rules or whatever you want to talk, 2017 set of rules, all draws should be done with another person in the room, and you are allowed, whatever the word is, to be in attendance at that. Obviously, we don't want someone literally looking over our shoulder when we're doing draws, but it's more that you could be in attendance, that you're there, and obviously then you can maybe giving yourself more integrity and of knowing that more confidence. Sorry, you're giving yourself more confidence in knowing that integrity happened there. But as part of the CPD of referees, if we ever found out, obviously, anything was being manipulated, that referee would be banned for life, in my opinion. Hopefully, it'll be the same view from Kevin and others. Anonymous question, which I like. Could you explain the overlap rule again as it stands now? Proposed change. Don't know if that's a hoax question, just trying to make me talk through it again. But I'll leave that till the end if someone reminds me, because I'll go back to the slide. I've lost the questions on the screen. Sorry, I don't know how to fix that. Bronwyn, what are the wildcard criteria that are generally used? So basically, for international wildcards, they're published on and basically for T1000 or international wildcards, we have the criteria on the Tennis Ireland website of what the performance team, so competition team don't make those calls, the performance team make those calls because they know the players better than us in terms of ability. And they're listed that could be returning from injury, young in the age group and therefore has more potential, the 6 or 7 that are listed on the website. In terms of the club ones from T500, generally again it could be home players, a member of the home club, which is absolutely fine as long as they have a criteria. And it's generally then exactly the same as the Tennis Ireland ones are very similar to. Siobhan. So I think I've said that already, Siobhan, in terms of if they do get through and enter and participate in 2 tournaments, they will be sanctioned. I think you're probably saying that they're probably saying which draw is better, but that happens in Tennis Europe and ITF draws as well. Will you make the recording available? Yes, we hope to. It's getting shared to the cloud as we speak, and we should make that available afterwards. Should have asked for questions. There's loads. Has anything put into helping kids get into seeing some competition if they don't make the cut? Or should they just enter as many as possible? Yeah, I feel that the second bit there, we don't want anybody missing out. Because say you enter the T500, but you are the 33rd person and you were eligible to play the T100, but you just didn't enter the T100 because you hedged your bet on the 500. Of course, common sense is to enter the 100 and the 500. And if you don't get into the 500, like we did this morning with David Lloyd's, you're just removed from the 500, and when you put in the 100, you cannot participate in a 100 and 500, obviously, because the 100 is just for beginners. But obviously, we're not going to stop you if you want to play a 500 up. But you should, like the anonymous question there, think it is good to enter both and get into something, and then you'll see what happens. Rena, and again, you only got questions 1, 2, 3. Well, I hope they were all good. Are bathroom breaks
just on
allowed
that? Sorry, Simon. There's a couple of people saying that. So, within the actual feedback poll box, you just need to scroll down for the other questions. So it only comes up at 1, 2, 3, but you need to put your mouse or your cursor over that poll quiz box and scroll down. Okay.
Super. Thanks for that, Kevin. Are bathroom breaks allowed between the warm up and start of match? Yes, they are, but they count as your one break. So it's not an additional break. If you take your bathroom break between the warm up and the start of the match, that is your break over, but it is allowed, yes. It just means you cannot have one for the rest of the match. Letty has some issue with you, Kevin. Still not happening, Kevin.
Oh no, it was the same issue of scrolling down for the other questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm only messing. Paul Cotter, regarding overlapping tournaments, can the duration of events which are curtailed due to potential? Oh, let me read that again. Told you overlapping is very confusing. Regarding overlapping tournaments, can the duration of events which were curtailed? Not exactly. If you want to email me on that one, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, or give me a phone call. Told you I've extended by 1 day. The overlap was bigger before. You were allowed a 2-day overlap. Now you're only allowed a 1-day overlap, and it's not in the events, it's in the whole tournament. So if that doesn't answer your question, Paul, give me a phone call in the morning or email me tonight when it's still fresh. Charlotte has basically taken over Ruth's account. Okay. I didn't get a link. You didn't get a link for the webinar. Second question, is there a rule for rest time between matches? Yes, that's already in the rules, so that's why it's not covered tonight. So that'll be in the rules. I don't want to get it wrong on the top of my head because it's different in the ITF slightly. But if your match is a certain length of time, so less than an hour, then you only have to have a 30-minute break. If it's between an hour and an hour and a half, I think it's an hour's break, and over that, then it keeps going up and up. So that you should be adhering to that, unless finals is usually the only one that you're allowed to get that down, because obviously finals day, and that's the same with ITF. You don't have to have that requirement on finals day, because someone might be in the same singles and doubles finals example. But you're very true. There's a lot at stake, and if someone's just played a match and someone played it 3 hours earlier, then they obviously have a longer break, which is fine. But you should have the entitlement to the break you're allowed. Could you enforce, Tim Wang? Could you enforce consistent open entries time across clubs. And I think that's what I was suggesting or certainly recommending. So they certainly open at the same time. Maybe you're talking about how long they open for, but that would be the same because obviously the deadline for closing is very similar. So unless I've read that wrong, Tim, again, you can give me a call or further expand, or email me. Anonymous, international ranking points are very high versus domestic tournaments. Was consideration given to reducing the international points? Yes, we took a lot of feedback on all this, and we feel that it's pretty right. Like a J5, which is most of the ones that we hold in Ireland. If you win the first round, which is it's very difficult to win, we usually only have maybe 3 or 4 of maybe 17 even get through the first round in a J5. They're getting 600 points for that win, if my recollection is correct. And that certainly should be compared to winning, or getting to a semi-final of a domestic tournament, in my opinion. But again, if you want to give us that feedback by email or have a call about it, you're more than welcome. For under 10 players, the early entry before 2024, would the points add up? Yes, you would be getting your under 12 points for the next year, if that's the question. Draws in Northern Ireland generally let kids play 2 events, whereas not in the South. This rule should be the same to ensure rankings are realistic. So fair point. That's what we talked about there in terms of we recommend, and we had some south of the border as well this year, but usually it's because the events in, say, Connacht or Ulster are usually smaller in terms of entries, so it's very easy to have 2 events, and you can certainly see the benefit of maybe under 16 girls playing under 16 girls and under 18 girls, because those events, I'm just taking an example, but those events are generally very small. So if the club and the court size again we're back into here, so Castlebar 4-day event at Halloween probably can't make it work because of scheduling the player twice in the same day, whereas David Lloyd's, which is a 7-day event, although they have more entries, can make it work. So we would recommend it, and as I said to some people who've asked us before, we're going to be actively encouraging it because it's good for the players to play 2 events and to play up and get matches and more matches basically in general when you're T500 and above. Obviously, if you're beginner level, we want to encourage you to stay within your own age group, just to get that experience at the same level. Looking at under 12 girls this year, Tennis Ireland lightly cater for all girls playing tennis. What is your view on this? I don't know if you're basically saying, Paul, that the entries for under 12s are small, maybe, because they have the same number of events, they have the same number of tournaments, as any other age group. So maybe you're saying that the under 12 girls entries are small, which we have addressed with the performance team. I think that probably comes back to coaches and performance tennis. We obviously are catering in the tournaments, but I think that highlights the fact that we need to bring more tennis 10s events, under 9 events, under 8 events, bringing those ages up. So they do have under 12s, and that's part of the TI Kids Tour, which has started recently. So I think that should change. Maybe it's the pressure of under 12 tournaments, like we said, or having a ranking system. I don't know for sure, but we'll get a lot of feedback on that from the performance team as well. Bronwyn, can Ulster players contact any of the TI competitions team? Of course you can. Or should they direct them in the first instance? This is for Craze. Yes, of course. Yeah. You're from Ulster. You're still okay. You can contact us. Anybody in any province can contact us at any time. Some provinces obviously have a competitions coordinator as well, so they're an additional person. But if you want to go to us, basically, you should always go to tournament first if you've got a question, because obviously we have lots of work. But we're always open to have a chat as well. I've lost question. I was just a Paul Anonymous. What are the rules regarding a child requesting an umpire on court due to continuous perceived cheating during a match and the tournament refusing to facilitate the same? So, good question. This is a question we not a question, but a topic we had with the tournament referees at the end of the summer with their CPD and feedback. So most tournaments are obviously light on help, and that's just what it is. We rely on a lot of volunteers after obviously the provincial or national referee who's run the tournament, but they need extra help. So my recommendation is always so we have some children that request an umpire before they go on the court. I don't think that's acceptable or should be adhered to, because they're perceiving that cheating is going to happen. I don't like that word cheating, obviously, either, but they're perceived cheating. You got away with it in your question. If I walked out to the match and a player asked me to umpire, I wouldn't refuse, but I'd say I'll keep a close eye on your match, because I'm obviously leaving resources short for the rest of the supervisors. But I would certainly say I'll keep a close eye on your match. I'll stay behind the court for the next few games. And if I have enough supervisors, I'll stick a supervisor behind or very close to that court just to keep an extra eye on things. So obviously, the word refuse is probably, I didn't refuse there, but I obviously tried to manage my resources as a tournament referee, and that's very important. But if there was a second or third occasion there, and I feel that my resources are probably better putting someone on the court because I'll always have to come back and forth, then of course I'll put a referee in the court. But this comes back to consistency of supervisor tournaments. So in the criteria for T1000s, we've recommended there should be one supervisor per 3 courts, and you should be able to keep an eye on everything on 3 courts. Keep an eye on something brewing on 3 courts. I've lost my lead here in questions because keep coming in, which is good. So I've just done anonymous. Everyone's anonymous. Why are all competitors restricted to playing in only their age group? So they only are at 100s and 200s. So you can obviously play, if you're under 14, you could enter, even if the tournament only caters for one event, you could obviously enter the under 16 singles at T500 and above. But T100, 200, we feel it's best to play within your age group for the rest of the people, because you are a beginner. And we do want more. We have requested to the tournament referees and clubs in general to maybe, we actively want them to run more T100 events in their own club for the surrounding area. So there's no reason why a club who doesn't host a tournament could still host a T100 in one day and do 4 matches in one day of quick format, one set matches. I've lost my questions again. So Joanne, hi Simon, thanks for hosting this. Will all clubs across the country be following, or will areas be up to discretion of the club referee? No, the only area that's still, and maybe we didn't look at or not, is that through 2 events, but that's the same as senior tournaments, Joanne. You're a tournament player, a very good tournament player, and so you'll know that every tournament, obviously, some cater for, you can enter 2 events, some enter 3 events as a senior, so it's no different here. But we will keep a close eye on it and make sure every tournament is getting the most out of their tournament, and that's the best we can do. Marie, in finals for a domestic tournament, having to accommodate ITF and Tennis Europe players seems very unfair to most players, especially if you're delaying the draw. Yeah, I understand your frustration, because obviously, yes, they miss out on the normal finals day. Yeah, I can't say for everyone, but obviously a lot of people who get to the finals of domestic events are playing in the Tennis Europes. And if you are in final for domestic, we would actively encourage you. You should be playing in Tennis Europes, of course, because you have a very good standard to make that domestic final. But I get your frustration. That doesn't happen very often. We only have a certain number of weeks, as I said there. But I can understand your frustration there. Maybe you want to highlight to the tournament referee. You'll come back the next day for the presentation. You can still come back, and they could do that presentation next day for you. And there's no problem with that, in my opinion. Guy Cahill, how are you doing? The current competition plan is summer dominant. Do you have any plans to increase the number of competitions in winter months? So yeah, similar to what you had there. Obviously, we had a small Tennis Ireland weekend tour that was done just before COVID. But personally, I didn't like that it only catered for a small number of players. So the example, as you said there, and if you missed it at the start, is we want to bring match plays back. So the idea would be that the national match plays would be in December, culminating from September regionals and maybe just after Halloween provincials. And therefore you've covered that October to December quiet period. And obviously you want most of January and the start of February for your coaching, as you know, in terms of getting them ready and doing any technical changes. But yeah, what I saw was the biggest gap is obviously from September to December. and we want to try to use that by bringing the national match plays, or all match plays, national match plays, regional match plays, and provincial match plays back, which you would have seen in the past, which was great for everyone, probably in your opinion as well. Another anonymous question. I shouldn't have said anonymous. Everyone's now been anonymous on purpose. If an under 10s player plays up for the under 12s competition in David Lloyd's, can they still not play in the Castlebar tournament, even though, yeah, you can't. Yeah. So Castlebar and David Lloyd's tournaments are the same week and overlap by more than 2 days. So obviously you'd be entering two under 12 competitions that are on at the same time, and therefore you cannot. In that case, are Tennis Ireland personnel monitoring draw advance? Yeah, so I went through the David Lloyd's draw with their referee this morning. Obviously, it takes a lot of time, and although we have had an increase in staff, we need extra people to try to do all that, especially in the summer seasons when we have loads of tournaments on. But yes, we are monitoring the draws as closely as we can, with the referees' help, obviously, because they're seeing the draws, or they're seeing the entries live. Do you know the dates for the two under 14 Tennis Ireland summer events? I do. They will be published next week, but it's 20. I'm gonna say 24th of June, then off for a week, and then there's another one the third week. But in terms of writing them down, they'll be published next week along with the rest of the calendar. If you enter tournament one that runs over 7 days, but your event finishes on the second day, can you enter tournament two that runs for one day only on the following Wednesday? So I think your question is if both tournaments are in the same 7 days, but the under 12 event is Monday, Tuesday, but the next under 12 event is Thursday, Friday, can you enter? And the question is no. That's for 2024. I've been a messy one in the last few years, and that's why we're trying to make it very, very clear cut. So you shouldn't be entering both. Paul, yes, you can explain if you want to type it out. Are there any plans for the future to have referees for all matches? I know a lot of volunteers. So in the criteria for T1000 tournaments for next year, we're requesting, this is kind of chicken and egg here. So we don't have many officials in Ireland, and that's why we've developed this new officiating pathway. But in the new criteria for T1000 and above this year, for finals day, for every final, we're requesting a referee be on the court for each an umpire. So even overrule, doesn't have to be making every single call, but to have that extra. Obviously, if we couldn't go backwards and do that for 30, 8 courts and matches, we don't have 8 umpires. But if we ever did, that would obviously be good. So if we start at the smallest level as we can, of getting them in for finals, because obviously finals are very important, this would be great. So we need to provide matches for umpires to get experience, and that's the way we're trying to do this. Delaying the draws, so we have a bit of same thing. Delaying the draws is unfair on the other under 14 players. I think it's one of these greater good things. I think we should be supporting everyone to try to be able to play both. What we had in the past was under 14 players deciding, if they had to choose between the two, deciding to play domestically, when we should be encouraging, because they were so adamant about getting points to protect rankings, which we don't want players to do. We want players to develop. So we would rather support both for the small number of weeks it happens. Thank you, Gary, for the feedback. Match play and new rankings sound great, but there needs to be a structured rule about how draws take place. So again, that's the second comment on transparent draws. So maybe we can look further into that. Again, it's a lot to ask, but obviously because a lot of volunteers are tournament referees, maybe we can look into some sort of online draw. Letty says, oops, Kevin, there you go. An anonymous last question, unless people are still typing. T112s in David Lloyd finishing the 30th. Can you enter T500 or 100 in Castlebar? No. So again, that's what I covered already. You shouldn't be, because it's clear cut. We want to make that rule clear cut that you shouldn't be entering two tournaments that overlap by more than one day, rather than the events, because that just confuses people. You're supporting the Tennis Europe players to play two tournaments, but not the players who aren't, with the new rules to allow each player only play one. Oh, sorry. So you're saying that you can't enter Castlebar and David Lloyd's, but you can enter a Tennis Europe and or Castlebar or David Lloyd's. Understand, but again, it's very clear cut in that rule. Whereas if you're doing two events, within the rules, they can't delay draws in Castlebar for Belfast or Belfast for Castlebar. So my opinion is we're doing the right thing there, but you can give me more feedback. Can more indoor tournaments be organised during the winter? Consider the weather in Ireland. Yes, but we have a lack of indoor courts, but also a lot of the coaching programs are taking up those indoor courts, and obviously, clubs need that. So I think that's covered most of the questions, unless I missed one.
One more in there.
Oh, I did miss one. If your child is currently under 14, can they play in the under 16? So no. If they're T100 or 200, they have to play their age group. If they're T500 or if you want to play T500 and above, obviously you can play in the extra age group. So this is again because we although I don't want to say your child's a beginner, but if you're T100 or 200, you should be obviously at that beginner level, or T100 especially. That we want people to be as close as possible in ability. And if you feel you're probably ready to play at age group up, then you're probably ready to play your T500 at your current age group. So there shouldn't be a need to play up there. When are these rules coming into effect? If again after feedback here, we're going to look at it again, but they should be in effect from the 1st of January 2024. There's no more tournaments after Halloween until no more national indoors would be the first tournament coming in. Thanks for answering the question, Simon. Is that for 2023? I'm not sure what the question was, Emma, but these rules cater for 2024. I recommended all these rules, obviously, to tournaments that are happening at Halloween. So I know David Lloyd's and Belfast are trying to already accommodate that playing past the latest starting times, because that's good practice. Any chance of the new website calendar syncing with good? Kind of good question. We can ask the website developers if that isn't happening already.
Yes, is the answer to that.
There you go. The other thing is we now have a direct link from the new website calendar. So if you click, you'll be able to click on the tournament. That will take you straight to the tournament software for that tournament, which means you don't have to go searching. So I think that's a bonus as well. I did promise to go back to the overlap rule because I don't think there's any. Oh, spoke too soon. Is the national indoors being played over 2 weekends? Is that not very disruptive to have that played to the rest of the week? It's a good question. It's published tomorrow, but we can take the feedback afterwards and see what's better for the year after. But the feedback we got was that it was more disruptive to family life, etc., to have it over the Christmas period. 2 separate blocks just means that obviously if you're in the second weekend, you've progressed in the draw, so you may or may not be needed, obviously. And it's going to be in DCU and Castleknock. So we're going to have 32 size draws, which is an improvement, hence the 2 venues, and a 24 draw for under 18s, which has increased from last year as well. So the feedback was that we wanted to include more people because only having it in DCU on 4 courts hampered that. So we're now expanding to 2 venues, which obviously puts up to 9 indoor courts, which means we can cater for slightly more people. So it may be seen as disruptive. I see it as benefiting. Again, that is after Christmas, and you have a bit of time off from playing your matches as well. You're not playing five 3-set matches in 5 days. You're going to be playing the first couple of rounds, and then you're going to have 4 or 5 days, not necessarily rest, but certainly recovery. So it should cut down any chances of injury as well. Sorry, my questions keep disappearing. Thanks. Oh no, that's the question. Will there be a fair balance of 1,000 tournaments across the province? Great question. So we want there are more 1,000 tournaments. Sorry, there is the exact number of 1,000 tournaments we can cater for. There will always, at the minute, there are more participants and more clubs in Leinster, of course. So Leinster will have. I would still consider that a fair balance, even if one province has more, because you have to cater for the players. I know Kevin will have exact members of different provinces, but I think is it 2/3? Is it 60% of players are from Leinster? Kevin, you did something on this the other day, but I can't remember. Don't want to put you on the spot here, but
yeah, no, tired about 60.
Yeah, we'll go for 60. And the same for T200s. Yes, basically we want to see that. And like I said, I would love to see more T100s because that will be the entry level players, which would encourage participation for the future. Is there a Tennis Ireland app for iPhones? I'm gonna have to put Michael on this one. There was a tennis app in the past. Um, it already
No, no,
existed. Yeah,
There's none at the
oh,
moment, but it is definitely
yeah,
something that we're looking into. So
yeah. There was one in the past as well, Kevin, but it didn't. It hasn't worked since because there've been no updates to it. But there was an app in
yeah,
the past as well. Like yeah, so something that would be good. I think obviously beneficial, Kevin, in terms of communications, etc. That would be a good thing.
yeah,
The questions
yeah.
that disappeared again. Uh, I can,
There's one more there.
yeah, I can see players' profile. I can see players' profile in the software may be different. Can the software reflect update activity and show all history? So maybe it should show all your history in terms of matches being on tournament software. If you've been in a league or interprovincial leagues, interprovincials are done on league software, so they are there, but in a different section. And there should any match that gets played on the software should show your history. So again, if you want to email myself or Michael, and if something's not shown, then we can maybe explain that to you. Can the draw size of the Junior Irish Open? So a good question that we'll take on with the club. Again, it's all about how many matches they can accommodate, and that's why they have I think it's 24, but they have a qualification obviously before that. So they have quite a large draw at the minute in terms of the qualification going through to the 24, I think it is afterwards. Like yeah. Um, so hopefully that answers that question. Let me go very quickly back and if any more questions come up, we can take them at the end. It's just past an hour, but we've done well there because it's taken about 20 minutes of questions, which is kind of what we want, yeah, in terms of we want questions.
Yeah, yeah.
So overlapping tournaments. So I think a lot of this has been answered in the specific questions there. So 2 week long domestic tournaments. From those questions, if it's on the calendar overlapping by more than one day, you should not enter both. That's as simple as we're trying to make it. In the past, it was events, which obviously is very messy, and you got to be very smart to work it out. So very simple. You shouldn't be entering both. International tournaments with a domestic, like again we've discussed in the questions, the finals of the domestic can be brought forward to Friday to accommodate the Saturday qualification. And again, not all people, most people that make the final of the domestic are maybe in the main draw of the ITF, but of course it can happen. Anybody can win any tournament, so it doesn't always happen. But we want to accommodate, we want to try to accommodate as many people as possible there. Although I know there was a small bit of feedback in terms of looking out for them too much, but I think it's the right thing to do in terms of being able to try to get players that lose in that international event that they actually do get participate in the domestic event because they want tennis. And if they only played in the international or only allowed to play in the international and lost in the first round of qualification, then they wouldn't be in anything for the rest of the week. So we want to cater for both because again we want to recommend and get more people on the international circuit, because that should be the pathway. And then the same week as the ITF, so we already said the draws, but it should be, as Charlotte I think said, it should be said in the blue box or in the tournament regulations when that draw exactly is going to be, which hasn't always happened this year. So it's very important that everyone knows that the draw will be when the draw will be held or will be held back to, because obviously the other draws will be made normally. So the 12s, say that the 12s, 16s, and 18s draws will be made, and then the 14s is getting back. It's important to know that in advance, and that hasn't happened. So that's something we will definitely strive to get through to the tournament directors and tournament referees. All this education we're giving the tournament referees in terms of the new education structure and accreditation will benefit everybody, including obviously the players and yourselves as stakeholders as well. So I don't know what raised hands means in the webinar. Does that mean you want to ask a question? I'm not sure.
There's a few more questions there.
Yeah.
4 at the moment, yeah.
So I think this is the question. T100 it's a very high level. Okay. So that's like what the feedback. That's why we kind of dragged it back 10 more in the entry requirements. So as I said, it was 1 to 49 couldn't enter. Now it's 1 to 59. Again, if a lot of people think that's still not catering for it, we could push that back even further. So we'll keep an eye on that. So you're saying the T100 is still too high for the level that's being played is still too high for people that are actually wanting to enter as beginners. Yeah, it's different for every tournament, but yeah, we do see players that obviously are still very, very decent. So I think if it starts off in the club itself, it'll be a better level. And regional match plays we cater for that in the winter or in the autumn season. Like yeah. Anonymous, sorry, Sam, my question was under current 2020. This is the one that said just 2023. My question was under current 2023 rules. If your child is currently under 14, can they play under 16? They will move. If your child is, can they play under 16? No, it shouldn't be recommended. So basically, although it wasn't a set rule, 97% of tournaments, because we recommended it last year, even though it wasn't in black and white, they shouldn't be playing. So I know David Lloyd's have in their criteria in their rules regulations, you cannot enter Castlebar and David Lloyd, so that should be the same both ways. I don't know if Castlebar stated that. I will look into that, but they should have. And you put Kilkenny, so maybe it's a different event in Kilkenny, sorry, but either way, you shouldn't be doing two like yeah. When you say shouldn't enter two overlapping, is there a rule to say cannot? And we're trying to ourselves and the tournament referee is trying to monitor that. But if it comes out afterwards that obviously the odd person slips through, maybe then you will lose all ranking points in both events. But it would help us if we all just adhere to the rule, obviously, and that's why these rules are trying to be made black and white. That it's less work for all of us if we just go by the rules instead of trying to get away with something. You might have said in the past you didn't know the rule, and that was our fault because it wasn't in black and white. Now everyone should know the rules. This year, some tournaments group together, for example, under 14 and under 18 over 2 to 3 days, even though tournaments for a week. So I'm guessing what you mean is they try to get through all matches within a certain number of days. At T1000 that can't happen really because you're playing one match a day in your age group. So it might have happened at lower levels. You know, for the T200, 100, I think it's beneficial to do the 4 matches over 2 days because everyone knows what they signed up to. And the feedback we got in the past was parents obviously don't want to be traveling one match a day at the beginner levels for 4 days. They'd rather do 2 matches a day for 2 days. At the higher levels, you should be having, you know, not as much a gap as possible, but longer gaps obviously for recovery. So depending on what your question was, that would be in terms of what ability you were talking about. Not a question, but a statement that T200, more T200 would solve overrank. Yeah, that's common sense. Very good. Yeah. But we need more tournaments to go forward to do that, and more. We can have those standalone or whatever. So if you are members of clubs, all you are obviously members of clubs. If you could recommend to do some weekend T200s over 2 days, T100s over 1 day, that would be great for the tournaments, for the club, for the club's players, for all the coaching, so all the players being coached in the club, because match play will make them want to play or want to get more coaching maybe, but also coaches want to see their players play matches. T500s happen often over 2 to 3 days, and it was beneficial for people traveling. So that's what I was saying, yeah. So obviously, like I said, the feedback we got is parents don't want to be traveling 1 match a day for 7 days. That's why tournaments were starting to see lower entries in the last kind of 5 years before last year. So I think it's worked, and you can see the T100s and 200s are near enough sold out every tournament. And obviously that's maybe because we got that ability, but also that it's over in 2 days. Is the calendar already set? Yes, but you can add in T200s, 100s. You can get a permit at any time. You don't need a permit for T100 events, so you don't even need to pay permit to hold those. So that's another bonus for clubs to be adding that to the calendar, so we can always add more stuff to the calendar. There you go. There's Paul back in. But that's what I asked you, Paul. Do you think it needs to be brought back more? You do. So it'd be interesting to see if more people could contact me to see if they think the same thing. Top 100 being excluded. I'm not sure. It seems a little much, but who knows? Again, we'll take on feedback on that. So hopefully I've answered everything. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Just to say a few words from my point of view. First of all, Thank you all for joining. We had about 86 people on the call. We still have 64, so we're doing pretty well on that front. In fact, up to 10 minutes ago, we had, and we were well through the questions, of which we've answered 62 questions as well. So listen, I just think it's been really good to see so many people interact with us and join in and are so interested, because this is such an important subject for tennis in Ireland and for Tennis Ireland too. I think also, I think hopefully all of you agree the amount of work that Simon, Rosa, now Neil putting in, and Michael is just phenomenal across all the volunteer committees as well. So in terms of governance, committees, board, a huge amount of work's been put into this, and a lot of stakeholder information has been taken too. We are probably going to call tonight, I think, in fairness, and I think what we should do is just for everybody's time is that if there's any additional questions, you all have the contact details for our competitions team, and to send those questions in, and of course they'll all answer them. I think it's just to say again, just well done to Simon and to Rosa in particular, who put so much work into this. It's a fantastic effort in terms of trying to just be more consistent and clear in regards to all of our rules, and make sure that it's more obvious in terms of the rules that people need to follow and will follow, and if they don't, what happens. So that's really it for everybody here. And again, just thanks all for joining us, and thanks a million to Simon as well for fantastic presentation and great work as well. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Cheerio. There's